today's guest is Anne Silvers. She's Canadian. She's from Waterloo. She's got a background in microbiology, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what got her into doing what she's now doing, which is very, very interesting. And I've invited her here to talk because, let me make sure I see her. I don't see her yet. Because, oh, there she is. Okay, Anne, he is an expert in dealing with some very difficult feelings that many in our community have. Specifically, there you go, you did, Anne.
Thank you. Yay, me.
Yeah, yeah. So I was just saying that we're going to talk today about some very difficult feelings that a lot of people have in this community, since our community tends to be people dealing with toxic relationships, high conflict divorce, custody battles, and really hard co-parenting situations. And so they often experience feelings of rage, injustice, and despair while going through the legal system, thinking that this is a system that we turn to for justice, and feeling the opposite and getting re-traumatized by it. And so I approached you because, first of all, I saw your clip with about alienation and male victims. And I thought, ooh, this is somebody that knows what we're talking about, who's also very sympathetic to male victims. And so I thought you'd be great to talk about a topic that several of our clients brought up and that I've lived with, is like, how do we live with this injustice? So why don't you first introduce yourself a little bit and what you do, and then we'll get to it.
So I did catch where you mentioned my background in microbiology. So that was my career number one. And then career number two was a stay-at-home mom. And then career number three is a counselor. And so I was a returning student when my youngest was in first grade. I went back to school, did 11 years part-time, plugging along to get all the degrees to be a counselor. And have had a private practice now for 20 years, over 20 years. And also have published about 16 books. And
I know. Like, wow. And we're going to talk about one of them in particular today.
Yeah. So the one that is about abuse of men by women is called Abuse of Women by Men, the other way around, of women by men. No, of men by women.
Like, are you sure?
So I have
everybody's abusing everyone all the time.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So and it's there so people can see as well. And I also have a quick book about partner abuse in any gender configuration. So I've written about the bad of relationships, and also have books about communication skills, emotion skills. And then my most recent book is up here, and it's Building Skills to Up-Level Life. It's a emotional intelligence workbook.
yes.
So that's in the arena of what people, both books actually, I think, are helpful when we're working through injustice. If it's good to know we're not alone. And so to know that this is actually what we're experiencing is, there's a lot of other people out there experiencing it, and to get some insight. So when people read my books about partner abuse, there's it's like you were a fly on the wall in my house, and you know me. And so that feeling of being known is really, I think, helpful for healing some of that wounding. And helping somebody sort through it. And then the emotional intelligence skills is being able to identify, well, what am I actually feeling? Get past the anger, get under the anger, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Anger is a secondary emotion. There's some kind of emotional pain underneath that's not getting dealt with directly, that's getting turned into anger. As long as we just keep releasing the tension at that anger level, we're not dealing with the underlying stuff. So it's just they're ready to be tapped into again and again and again. So being able to identify what is under that anger. Is it a feeling of injustice? Is it a feeling of being disrespected, of being betrayed, of being fooled, I think that's a huge one for people who have come out of an abusive relationship or are in the shock of the person that I loved and did so much for, and who said they love me, they're putting me through hell. And they're falsely accusing me of stuff. And so they can feel like, how was I fooled by this person? So that's huge. Guilt can tie in there too. There's so many pain points that can be underneath that anger.
Yeah. I mean, for us and for our community, I think, well, tying it to my own situation, for a while I was really angry at my ex-husband, but after so many years in the legal system, it wasn't anger at him anymore. I didn't care about him. But every day of these 9 years that I had been in the system, I would wake up and then within the next minute, I would feel so angry that I was still stuck in this system. Like, why is this taking so long? How could they be allowing this person to get away with stuff when the facts are the facts and already I have these orders, and why aren't things being enforced? And I think that's a big part of our clients and our community's experience. It's like, how is the system that we're turning to for relief instead making things so much worse?
Yeah.
And especially when a decision is made that affects my life and my kids' life for who knows how long, like, it's not fair. How do I go on with that sense of injustice?
Right. So being able, I think partly recognizing you're not alone, that because it does feel very lonely. It feels like I'm the only, that the system works for other people. Why isn't it working for me?
Right.
And I think being able to recognize actually the system doesn't work for a lot of people. That's the unfortunate truth. And I've done some work with legislators, and what I've noticed is, so we elect these people and they have whatever background they've got. They could be a farmer, they could be a lawyer, they could be a teacher, whatever background they've got, and their personal background. And then we put thousands of potential bills for potential laws in front of them on hundreds of thousands of topics. And of course they get it wrong a lot of the time. They're listening to the loudest voice a lot. And so many things get distorted, and there is injustice. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do we process that? Like, I think, like, I'm thinking about one of our people now who's got, it's a man, and he happens to have a guardian ad litem involved with this case who really has not done well for him. And he feels like this guardian has not paid attention to significant details. And the situation is really unfair. And this is a common experience in our community. Like, how could someone who's been appointed as an expert not be doing their job properly, and I'm the one suffering because of it?
Right. So I do notice that over and over again, that guardian ad litems are biased. They come in with their own bias, and even that bias might have been what drew them to taking on that role in the first place. And I do see a lot of mistakes and a lot of people who are wrongly away from their children because the guardian ad litem has added to the pile of misinformation. And we do have what we're talking about here is administrative abuse. And when I wrote the book, well, let me get it right this time, abuse of men by women. Now I lost track of what I was saying. So we were talking about guardian ad litems and
bias, and how sometimes, like, there's a lot of people who have been affected, and
right,
because someone,
yeah.
So I love that term, administrative abuse.
Yeah. So when I wrote the book, I was using the term legal abuse. And so more recently I've come across the term administrative abuse, which actually, is a little bit broader. It's still talking about that there's that legal justice system part of it, but I think it more easily embraces also like guardian ad litems and people in those administrative positions who have control over your case. I mean, this is actually what it comes down to, is a lot of feeling of powerlessness.
Right.
And powerlessness is a awful feeling. And we feel cornered, without any escape and without any power to change what's happening to us. And unfortunately, I've seen many cases where the reality is the person doesn't have the power to change it.
Right.
And you fight as long as you think is reasonable, and you have to keep checking in with yourself. How much longer do I actually fight this? And
Mm-hmm.
do I actually need to give up and regroup my life? And I'm sorry to have to say that, but
Yeah.
the reality is, even though you have right on your side, right does not always prevail.
So how does somebody live with this? Because I know we're going to talk about depression soon, especially male depression. But so let's say somebody comes to you and they've had a terrible decision made against them, and they feel it's very wrong and the facts are on their side, but somehow they didn't come out. Sometimes it might be a legal error or whatever the case is, but they're just like, my voice was not heard, and this terrible judgment has been made, and now I have to wait until I can go back and do something about it. Because a lot of time we know with modifications and appeals, it takes 2 years usually, minimum,
Yes.
to get back in front of something like this.
Yes. So what you're focusing, what you're talking about here is there's hope. There's still hope that there's another thing to try, and it's in
Right.
the
But
work.
the time,
But there's this waiting. Yeah.
How do I live without feeling like I'm living for the future and angry at the past?
Yeah. Okay. So it's different pieces, right? It's not just one. So the anger at the past, let's tackle that one first. So that is being able to learn how to label your emotions and process them. So lots of steps in my book, Up Level Life. I think it'd be worthwhile for me to explain something about emotions. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what you're here.
All right. So here's my shtick about emotions. Emotions are information. They are like your personal radar system, always going out and bringing back pings of information. The better you are at labeling your emotions and understanding the information they have to give, the better your life is. Creates like a roadmap for you. Go here, oh, don't go there. Back up, straight ahead. We get a lot of data points from our emotions when the system is working well. We get into trouble when the system is not working well. So we might not know how to label our emotions or what information they have, or we've had some training to avoid thinking about them or dealing with them, or we've had experiences that have led us to, ignore them, pull back from them, or we're overwhelmed by them. It could be, any combination of reasons the system isn't working well. It's like we have a container for each emotion inside of us. So imagine you have a container for shock. You have a container for feeling treated unjustly. You have a container for grief. There's a whole lot of grief involved in these cases. We'll have grief with any kind of loss. And so we'll put all the painful stuff over here. We'll put the feel-good stuff over here. So we have a container for feeling respected, one for feeling competent, one for feeling lovable, etc. Let's say an event happens and creates one painful emotion. That emotion comes into its container. We are meant to grab and keep the information from that emotion. If we did that, that would be like, oh, I got a thumbs up. I'm sorry. If we did that, that would be like adding to the structure of this container. So year after year, we're gathering all this information about our emotions, what it feels like, how to deal with it, what information it has. And that's like adding to the structure of this container. So now imagine a release valve at the bottom of the container. So the emotion comes in, we grab the information and keep it, we open the release valve, and we let the rest out. We let that burden part out. That's ideal. That is not what's happening for most people. So
Can you give me an example? Can you like give me like an example of something, let's say injustice or rage?
okay. Well, let's put rage aside because I'm going to
Okay.
get to rage. It's a separate
Okay.
thing. Okay.
Okay.
So injustice. So let's say the ideal is to be able to identify, okay, I feel injustice. What are the circumstances I'm feeling this under? Why am I feeling this? So getting that insight, and there's actually a formula for doing that. There's a structure that really is helpful. It's called an I message. It's I felt blank or feel blank, putting in an emotion, when blank, putting in a situation, because blank, putting in the reason. And there may be
Okay.
many becauses. They could go back in time, like something like injustice. It might be, okay, the injustice I felt today because I just got an email telling me I lost again, or and then it's tagged into, and the injustice I felt last week because, and the injustice I felt 3 years ago, and the injustice I felt when I was a kid because I got bullied. All of that processing can really help open that release valve, and it's almost like once we get it, the the release valve opens up. I mean, there's some things we can do extra, but does that
Yeah.
give you some?
Yeah, it's almost like I can't think of the cute little line, but it's almost like you something it when you define it, like you figure out what it is. It's like just having a label. Like I
Yes.
think about how I didn't know the term narcissism. Like I was with my ex for a decade. I had no idea what that meant. And then when I started hearing things and I learned there was a name for what I was experiencing, that I felt relief because I thought, oh, this isn't just this weird situation that I can't define. Like that's what it is. And so it pointed me in a direction to research and be like, oh, and every time I found more, I was like, this is so validating.
Right.
Again, like you said, like I'm not alone. This is this huge thing that all these people experience it. And now I can figure out ways to deal with it.
Yes, I think that's great insight that similar can happen when you can label your emotions,
Mhm.
and to recognize, somebody can get kind of stuck on a catch-all word for their emotions, like I'm mad. Okay. But that's
Yeah.
not very much information, and it doesn't allow for much processing. And so it doesn't allow for much relief and information gathering, because emotions are information. So it's supposed to help us. They're not supposed to just be weighing us down. It's supposed to direct us and help us. Um, if we can recognize, okay, I'm mad. No, let me move ahead, and then we'll get back to this. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So with this containers, for most people, the release valves are stuck shut. It's like
Mhm.
we're crazy glued shut, and then we add all sorts of mechanisms for sealing it up. And this is where drugs and alcohol and other kind of avoiding mechanisms could come into play, because we're trying to avoid our pain.
Mhm.
And um, so what happens then is that the container is now shut. Okay. So it's not a flowing system then, like it's meant to be. It's a backing up system.
Mhm.
So imagine the container backs up, backs up, backs up, fast or slow. At some point, it's full. It's a finite container. It can only hold so much. At some point, it can get full. And then we seal it. We create like a film or scum on top.
Mhm.
But you're going to feel this emotion again. And the next time, because it's part of being human. So the next time, it might be an event that creates a large amount of the emotion. It could be an event that creates a small amount of the emotion. So it could be a pinprick's worth. It could just be the hint of the possibility somebody is treating you in a way that fits with this emotion. So it'll break the seal. And it could be a pinprick's worth that's going to break the seal. And you're not going to feel just the emotion that goes with what just happened. You're going to get this whoosh of
Mm.
overreaction. So if you've had injustice last week and the week before and the week before and 3 years ago and as a kid, and it's all there, ready to be tapped into all the time. And that's why each new time, that's part of the reason why each new time it feels so enormous. Um, Now, there's another part of the system, part of the overflow contributes to what I call the anger ooze. Anger is a secondary emotion. Any level of anger from irritation to rage is that secondary emotion. And it's based on something, some pain underneath that got tapped into and overflowed. So when we release the tension and anger, so we go out and we rant, let's say, all we're doing is releasing that tension and anger. We're doing nothing to deal with that underlying backlog.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we can do moving forward is, okay, I'm angry. What's underneath this anger? And for one anger event, might be one thing underneath it, might be a dozen things underneath it. So we might feel injustice. We might feel grief. Like one anger event, we might feel injustice. We might feel grief, anxiety, huge for people dealing with these situations. Betrayed, ignored, belittled. You know, I've got a list of 101 emotions that I created for working with people, and so it's 50 painful ones and 50 feel good ones, and probably a lot of the 50 painful ones fit for people dealing with these these traumas around the injustice of family court and that getting entangled in it.
Yeah. So in order to get to the feelings underneath the anger, how do we do it? Is it therapy? Are there any other ways to do it? Sometimes talk therapy doesn't work for certain people.
Yeah. So I think, again, my book, Up Level Life. So what I love about some of my newer books that like Up Level Life, they're workbooks. And so what I do is I give a little bit of information and then immediately an exercise for people to put it into action. So you can learn a tidbit and move on and learn another tidbit. So learning how to label your emotions. People tend to focus in on four, what I call the famous four: mad, glad, sad, and afraid. And so we have this clumping thing that goes on that gets in the way of us sorting it out and actually being able to process it and get that information. And then when we got the information, it kind of has more of a tendency to let go. And then there's a lot of other active things. So identifying our emotions and processing them is something. Learning how to not ruminate, I think, is another key. And that takes catching ourselves that our mind is going around in circles.
Oh, yeah. In the middle of the night in particular.
Yes. Yes. So, and I talk about this in Up Level as well. So there's a mechanism called thought stopping, where we can, the thing is, if we're a ruminator, we got lots of opportunities to try these things over again. If something doesn't work, we're going to ruminate again, so we can try something else. But we learn how to catch ourselves at ruminating and stop that and move our brain over to something neutral or encouraging. And so being able to learn relaxation techniques, and like in the book, I have 12 quick resets that are under 2 minutes.
Really?
Yeah. And then about a dozen more that are like 20 minutes or so. So, you do a quick reset to buy yourself time to just change, get out of that loop, to get that, that anxiety down or that anger down. And then you're able to potentially make a choice of, okay, I'm going to do something that's going to give me more relaxation, like go for a walk, or, get out in nature, go change the oil in the car, do the dishes, something. And then you've got to, if you do that, you've got to make sure you're not spending that time ruminating about how mad you are.
Right.
I just had this happen to myself the last week, where I got an email and I was angry at the email. So I found myself kind of pacing around the house a little bit, dealing with that energy. And I decided, I'm not going to get rid of this energy in the house. So I got to go for a walk. So I had time. I went for a walk. I'm like 10 minutes into my walk, and I realized I'm ruminating about how mad I am. And I said to myself, don't do that. and focus in on the trees and focus in. I live near the water. I was walking near the water, so I focus in on the water. That is a technique to help you get your mind out of that negativity of. So focus in on what's around you now. I'll teach you a quick one right now.
Yeah. Because as you're saying that, it makes me think a little bit about EMDR and the rapid eye move, like back and forth, where your brain can't do two things at the same time. So if you force yourself to do like focus on nature or the water, or the eye movement back and forth, then you forget about the thing you're ruminating on.
Yeah. And
but teach us the tip.
Yeah. Okay. So the first tip I would say is, one of those quick resets is just take a couple of deep breaths. just make yourself take a couple of deep breaths, and deep breaths. We hear about this all the time because they work, and they work because if you focus on the breath, now you've taken your mind off of the thing you're ruminating about. Okay. The deep breaths also massage the vagus nerve, which goes from the gut to the brain, and on the way out goes to your heart and your adrenal gland. And so it's blood pressure and your stress response is involved. So the deep breaths help that stand down. And then they also, there's a tendency when we're ramped up that we are we're not breathing well. And so changing that helps oxygenate your brain and your body. So taking a couple deep breaths can help. There's another one called 3-3-3, where you name three, and you can do this in your mind, or if you really needed to do it out loud, you name three things you can see, three things you hear, and then you move three body parts.
Oh.
So it's really grounding. Yes, it helps you. So you notice that three things you can see is pretty easy. Then three things you hear, you got to work hard. You got to focus harder to hear the three things. And then moving three body parts helps you get in your body and out of your brain. So that's a couple deep breaths and 3-3-3.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's talk about if somebody like depression. Depression is really common in our community because of whatever reason. You know better than I do what happens to the body, and why people get depressed. And I know part of it in our world is a sense of despair.
Yes.
That nothing is going to get better. This has been awful, and I have no agency anymore over my life.
Right.
So talk to us about that.
So where I stopped off at my analogy around emotions and anger being that secondary emotion, anger is explosive. So it'll come out in little explosions of biting sarcasm or irritated tone, everything that from big explosions of rage. That's anger turned outwards. Depression is anger turned inwards. So you're imploding. And it still is retrace the whole system. What's underneath in those pain containers that's not getting dealt with, that's getting turned into depression. So again, being able to label your emotions, get out of that clump of I am mad or I am sad. So my 4 was mad, glad, sad, and afraid. And sad can be that depression clump. And instead being able to process through, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling? What are my options? Okay. Unfortunately, some of the options in these scenarios is going to be, I'm running out of options. Or my option is, I have to figure out how to wait for a year. So then it's being able to reset yourself on the long term, like I guess short term is a year, but maybe it can certainly feel like long term.
Oh yeah.
And be able to find your happiness. So when I was talking before about the containers of emotion, and I was talking about the pain, on the painful side of things, we tend to have those release valves sealed shut, and so we're not processing. On the feel good side of things, we tend to have those release valves stuck open. So things are happening that have the potential of giving us nourishing, lift us up, help us feel good emotions. They have a tendency to come into their container and just whoosh right back out. So we've got this deficit of, we have so much pain, but we're also have opportunities in every day. I know things can be bad on a overall kind of, or in one element of life. And I think that's where we have to be able to put it, is this is one element of life. How can I grow the other elements of life while I'm in this waiting mode on this one? How can I stop fixating on this one area, even though it has its tentacles into other parts of life too? I get that. But how can I grow my happiness in other areas while I continue to work on coping with this one?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I find some moments of joy in everyday life? If I'm feeling like my overall outlook is crap, can I find something today? Can I find a smile today? And if you can't find a smile, just smile. If you can't find a reason to smile, smile anyway. Because research shows that if we smile, we release endorphins. And we don't have to have the reason to smile, which makes us happy, and then we happen to smile. We can smile, and then we'll have a reason to be happy.
You just made me think of something. So I have this, I take these like intense cardio kickboxing classes, and I love my teacher, and I've interviewed him before. But anyway, in the middle of like a hard workout, he'll say, "Smile, smile." It's like, what? And now you've just given me the reason as to why he's making us do that in the middle of like suffering.
Right.
Everybody smile.
Yes, if you can release endorphins in the middle of the pain, then that maybe helps you go on.
Yeah.
So
Very interesting.
So a key for people going on in these situations that are so painful is find something to be happy about. Now, we got to go back to depression, because we want to be careful about the things we're finding to be happy about.
Right.
That they're healthy things. And I would say part of it too is catch yourself at the unhealthy things that you're doing, that a person is doing for trying to find happiness. So depression in men can look very different than depression in women. And the psychology gurus in the day, when we were figuring out what are the symptoms that we want to list for depression, they looked at women to find the symptoms to list for depression. And so it may look like that in a man. So it may look like you can't get out of bed. You don't enjoy anything that you normally would have enjoyed. You're crying a lot. It could look like that. In men, it can also look like gambling and alcohol abuse and drug abuse and even affairs, promiscuity. Any of those mechanisms for avoiding emotions. And
interesting.
Yeah, it can look like over exercising. So exercise is a great way to deal with anxiety and help our mind steer off of sources of emotional pain. We want to monitor ourselves for, am I doing this in a healthy level, or has it turned into an addiction for me? And so I'm doing bodybuilding or something, or is it getting in the way? Are my priorities off because I'm driven to do it?
You know, what you're saying is making me think of something. Years ago, when I was in the divorce process, or actually right on the cusp of deciding whether it was time to end the marriage, my therapist had said, "What are you doing to get through this really stressful time?" And I said, "I'm good. I'm doing all this exercise and blah, 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 dance and this." And she said, "That's great, but everything you're doing is very active. And you need to find some things that are more passive too, like to calm your body down. So active is fine, but she stressed the need for balance."
That's probably an individual thing. I think that men in particular, activity could really be the thing to find,
Really?
yeah, to, you know, get out and play ball with your buddies, or, you know, get out of the bar.
Yeah.
Watch out for how much time you're spending at the bar, or, because alcohol is actually a depressant. So it adds to depression. Alcohol also gets in the way of sleep. So there's a number of things about alcohol people don't know, and they're counterintuitive. So one is we can be drawn to alcohol to help us sleep when we have this ruminating tendency that gets in the way of our sleep. And alcohol might help you get to sleep, but it will ruin your sleep. So you're getting this bad quality of sleep. And so then the next day, you're more down, you're more tired, you're dragging through the day because you've interfered with the quality of your sleep. The other thing that people don't usually know about alcohol is there's a shadow effect in that it creates anxiety the next day. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So really, I would encourage people, watch out for your alcohol intake when you're dealing with depression and anxiety. You want to watch out for caffeine intake if you're dealing with anxiety and anger, because caffeine can ramp those up, and they can contribute to that ruminating. Your brain is spinning. It can get in the way of sleep. So some things to know about caffeine is the half-life of caffeine is 5 hours. So on average, for the average person in the average circumstances, in 5 hours, half the caffeine is gone. Half is still there in 5 hours. And so a coffee that you're having in the morning, depending on your circumstances, how your body's metabolizing it right now, even a coffee in the morning might interfere with nighttime sleep. Just depends on
You're
yeah.
You're making me think of my Tuesday night hot fudge sundaes and why I don't sleep well.
That's it. Exactly. And they
Yeah.
can. So I had a friend. I was out for dinner with a friend one time, and she was talking about her panic attacks. And I didn't know as much about the food and supplements and all of that and anxiety at the time. I've written a book, Feed Your Calm, about food and supplements for anxiety. But she was saying she was having these panic attacks, and she's describing the first time it happened. It was after going out for dinner with friends, and she had coffee and chocolate cake. And I said, well, you know, maybe that was contributing. She's like, oh, no, couldn't possibly be. And I'm like, no, definitely.
Wow. Interesting. That's really interesting. I've been taking lots of notes.
Yeah. And I have blog posts, by the way, about a lot of these topics, like, so on annsilvers.com, no E on Ann. If you go on there and in the search bar that's on the website, put in some of these, like put in caffeine, a blog post about this will pop up, and where I talk about, there's so many sources of caffeine that somebody might not even recognize that they're intaking more than they thought.
Wow. So maybe part of all the rage that our clients are dealing with is not just the actual events, but the caffeine intake. And I think about all the insomnia that's associated with this kind of stress, and thinking I need to stay awake, I need to get through this, and I'm going to take a lot of, drink a lot of caffeine.
Yeah, right. So then this cycle is going on where the caffeine to get through the day, then the lack of sleep, then the caffeine to get through the day, then the lack of sleep. Throw some alcohol in there, and you got a chemistry experiment going on in your brain.
Right.
So
while you're dealing with highly emotional court things that you have to stay focused and make big decisions on, and okay, interesting.
Yeah. So you mentioning that makes me think of another thing. When I was working on writing the book Feed Your Calm, I interviewed a naturopath and who specializes in natural, basically food and supplements for mental disorders and mental health. And she was saying with anxiety people, her first question out the gate is, are you getting protein throughout your day? So she was like, if you don't fuel your mind, you're going to not be, running well. in terms of your brain power. And so being able to, that's another thing for your people to monitor is protein throughout the day. And she took it to the where she actually in our local family court, she supplied, she did first of all, she did a research project with judges, family court judges, and looked at their judgments before lunch and after lunch and found a difference.
Wow.
And so she and somebody else started a charitable organization where they supplied protein bars to people in family court. And specifically, they were supplying them to the section that was dealing with custody and reunification and all of that.
Wow. That is fascinating.
Yeah. And then I was talking to one of my clients about that, and like they were grandparents who had custody of their grandchildren and in and out of family court about it. And they looked at each other and they went, "Oh, so we saw the protein bars there at court." So they were in one of the courthouses where this nonprofit was supplying the protein bars because
That's amazing. I think of how often people say, what should I think about when I have court coming up? And now I'm going to say, make sure you bring a protein bar.
Yeah. Don't run your body fuel low. Like, don't come in hyped up on caffeine and do get your protein throughout the time before you're there. Yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
water. Water would be another one. You might start making sure you have a bottle of water you're taking in for your clients or something like that. Because
our court doesn't allow water in the court.
Oh, dear.
Isn't that crazy? When you go through security, they take away your water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you have to buy it in there, but it's not allowed in the courtroom either.
Okay.
But some courts allow it. But it's interesting. Like, you think, why? Well, maybe like the airport too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the why. So we have to find a way to deal with that, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and this is so helpful.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So back to, I know we've been on for a while, and oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking the time. But before you go and before you tell everyone again how to find you, but are there any other tips for finding that smile or like making yourself get that hit of something positive? I thought of one of just, if you can't think of anything, give someone a compliment. When I give someone a compliment and I know I'm making someone else feel good, it makes me feel good. And it's so easy.
Yes, and I'm gonna play off of that one. Another one is learn to take a compliment yourself. Yes. So many people, especially when they're in the throat, they've been falsely accused. So there's a lot of, that hits the self-esteem so deeply, and so you feel really bad about yourself. And a lot of us are trained either we don't have the training on how to take a compliment in, or we've been actively trained that it's a bad thing to take in a compliment, like it's boastful or prideful or something. So I'm here to say, no, it's a good thing to take in a compliment. Doesn't mean that you're an obnoxious person to be able to take in a compliment. So if you need to train yourself to do this, then it can take some activity. You have to work at it a little bit. So what I say to people is, okay, don't push off the compliment immediately. Like there's a tendency to say, oh no, I'm this or that. Instead, take it in like you're breathing it in, as if you're breathing it into the core of you, and then let it spread out and fill you up, that compliment. And sit with it. And stop yourself, like I said, stop yourself from pushing back and like, oh no, because we are meant to have those lifts in our day and in our life. And so when I was writing Up Level Life, I published it last summer. And when I was writing it, I realized I wanted to spend equal time on how to deal with pain and how to savor the feel good and get more feel good in your life. Like, not only have the instances that have the potential of giving you feel good, but savoring them, feeling them, and then in some ways bringing them into your life. And again, from healthy sources, not from the unhealthy sources that are going to have a cost to them.
you're making me think of something. So we have this weekly legal abuse support group, and we meet on Sundays, and we mix our men and women together, which is unusual, but we love it. And one of the things that I notice happens is people, when they have something great happen in court sometimes, and they'll report back to the group, they'll kind of gloss over it, and they'll be like, and then this happened and I got everything I wanted, but, and then they go to something else. And I feel like I have to say, whoa, did you hear what you just said? You pause, like pause. Did everybody hear? Like, you just said that you got some amazing thing to happen,
Yeah.
or you got everything you wanted. So let's just stay there for a little bit and think about all of the progress that you have made and this triumph that you've just gotten, instead of just rushing to the next thing and awfulizing about, but I'm going to lose it because this might happen, blah, 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 blah. So I think, again, like pausing, and even though it's uncomfortable, to think like I did something really awesome, or I am awesome in some way, and somebody just told me so, like to learn to, even though it's uncomfortable, like sit with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you as a leader, you set up a mechanism for the savoring. You set up the mechanism for, let's stop here and think about this a little bit.
Yeah.
So research and writing, like journaling, is another mechanism for both processing pain and savoring the feel good. So research shows that, and when I'm talking about journaling, by the way, I'm not talking about diary writing. I'm not talking about it's 9 o'clock at night, so I gotta say I ate pizza for lunch. That's not. That's not
Right.
I think of journaling in a more therapeutic, purposeful way of processing. And so research shows, and this is research that was replicated, and so it's solid. If you journal about difficult things or feel good things, either, and it includes the 3 components I'm going to tell you, not only does mental health improve, physical health also improves. And the 3 things are the thoughts. Okay, that's the easy one. We that's kind of our go-to. We're going to journal our thoughts. Okay, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions have to be there to get these pluses of improved mental health, improved physical health. And then the third one is insights. And not every time you journal are you going to necessarily get insights, but it's an element to strive for. And insights might not, they don't have to be gigantic. They could be, an insight could be, oh, I realize that I've had injustices in an earlier part of my life, and so I'm going to process that some more another day. And that could be an insight. An insight could be like, wow, I just figured out that this happened and this happened and this happened. So it could be a big one, big insight, or it could be a small one. It could be an insight, could be, I really need to go for a walk because I gotta burn some of this off.
Yeah. I've kept journals for more than 40 years, and I know the power of what you're talking about. And I think sometimes insights come when you have no idea what's going on. Like later when you read back what you've written, it's like I knew that all along. I knew that for such a long time, and I can't believe that I didn't process it on a conscious level.
Right, that it didn't really stick.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, journaling is fascinating. So Anne, this has been such an amazing, helpful, like adviceful conversation. And I thank you so much for coming on with me. Can you tell people how to find you and your 16 books?
And I will say, I want to give a plug to another product. So I have another whole line of products, which is hypnosis recordings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. We have to get you back on to talk about that because I love talking about hypnosis.
Okay. So I have one, and I have recordings on my annsilvers.com e-store, which is also houses my blog posts. So one of them is called Release and Refresh, and it is a mechanism for releasing the emotional pain and the harm done, the being abused. And it doesn't have to, it's not requesting the brain to go to any specific incidents. It's just a letting go process of me gently walking you through the letting go. And the goal being bring that pain level down so you have a more manageable baseline that you're dealing with. And it's organized. All my hypnosis recordings are about a half an hour long. They're all organized to what I'm saying in them. You can listen to them anytime you have a half an hour to relax or as you're going to sleep. Most people listen to them as they're going to sleep. You can fall asleep 2 seconds in, they're still going to work. Most people report they go to sleep more easily and they get a better quality sleep. So there's that. That's on my e-store, and that's called Release and Refresh. And then I have a blog post on the e-store. If you put in the search Amazon books, it'll populate with a blog post about the 16 books with links back to Amazon. Yeah, and
they can find you on Instagram too. Like I'll put your handle on our
so I'm on too. Instagram. I'll try and get, I've gone into different times where I've focused on one social media platform or another, and I've not focused on Instagram. But I'll work on just getting over there.
Check your messages there, just in case.
Yeah, right. And I do have some feel good. I got some what I have done on Instagram in the past. If you go to my I don't know how we get them back there because I don't even remember. I think Ann Silvers is my handle on Instagram. Yeah, okay, there you go. I do have a lot of things that are feel good, lift you up quote graphics, and that I've created over the years that are on there. And I'll try and give it some attention in the upcoming days to give people some reasons to smile.
Okay. Excellent. All right, Anne, thank you so much again. And we'll definitely have to have you back on to talk about hypnosis more, but this has been really, really helpful.
Great. Glad I could be here.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.